This is a lecture from Open Tuition. To benefit from the lecture, you should download the free lecture notes from opentuition.com.
Now, I said I would get back to diversification. Remember, we had two sorts of diversification. We had unrelated diversification, and this is this one. Unrelated or conglomerate diversification, basically random businesses stuck together. You need to be very, very suspicious about this. Usually it leads to a loss of value instead of an increase in value. You have to think, what's the benefit of bringing two unrelated businesses together? It's, let's say, supermarket business and a house building company. What's the purpose of bringing them into one group? Because you're certainly not going to get synergy. You're not really going to be able to combine the head offices, combine the IT systems, combine the marketing, because they are so different. If they're radically different, you're not going to get synergy. And what tends to happen very often is you bring them together into one group, and the people in head office feel that almost to justify their existence and their salary, they have to start meddling in these subsidiaries. And they turn what had been quite a successful business, they turn it into an unsuccessful business because they try to apply inappropriate management styles. But the only time where conglomerate diversification is justified is if the subsidiary you're taking over is at the moment underperforming. And what you do is you basically you turn it around. So it's been badly managed at the minute. You buy it at a low price because its profits are low. You sack the managers, you put in new managers, they turn it around, they make the profits higher. That will make its value higher. You can sell it on at a profit. But if you take on a business which was already performing really well, you have to think, what benefit is this merger or this bringing it into the group going to give? Where are we going to squeeze more profits from? And as I say, usually you don't squeeze profits from it. You destroy profits in some way, and you often end up selling it back to the original owners at about half the original purchase price. All of these other ones here, backward vertical integration, horizontal and forward vertical integration, they're all related diversification. There is some connection between the holding company, if you like, and the various subsidiaries. An example of horizontal diversification, you can see it in one of the European airlines, SAS, which is a Scandinavian airline system. They own Radisson Hotels. And you see that's going to work because when you go onto the SAS website, you book a flight, the flight's leaving at 5:30 in the morning or something. Radisson tends to have hotels at airports. Then they can say, you're leaving very early, would you like to stay the night before? So there's no worry or bother getting to the airport on time for your early morning flight. Or if you get into the airport at kind of 1 in the morning, again, they can offer accommodation. They're both in the kind of service industry. They're both dealing with the travelling public, tours and so on. There's a lot of kind of shared knowledge and marketing skills which could be shared between them. A lot of cross-marketing is going to be possible, and it just makes very good sense. They will probably make quite good profits from that merger. Backward vertical integration is basically where you take over a supplier, and forward vertical integration is where you take over a customer. String of shops, say. It seems superficially a good idea because you're making goods, let's say, and you sell them for 10 and you see them in the shop at 25 and you get all kind of insulted. Gosh, they're selling my goods at 25. I only sold them at 10. If I took them over, I could have my profit and their profit. There's a lot of kind of almost feeling of greed coming out of it here. How dare they make profits out of me? But you have to be careful about it. For example, one of the things that can happen is you are dealing with a different business. This one is manufacturing, and this one is sales. Taking over this string of outlets, these shops. What makes you think that because you can run a manufacturing business well, you can run a retail business well? There's a chance that you will meddle inappropriately in this new subsidiary's business. You lose what's called the discipline of the market. So if you take over a subsidiary, if you take over your supplier here, then in a way they kind of have a sigh of relief, really, because they say, right, anything I produce, these people are going to buy. And they kind of think then, well, I don't have to watch my costs, I don't have to watch the quality. Almost any old rubbish I produce, they're going to buy it. That's why they bought me, was to have an in-house supplier, and you get very sloppy. Think what would happen if instead of having your in-house supplier, you had, let's say, 5 suppliers, and every time you placed an order, you said, what's your price, what's your quality, what's your delivery date, and so on. You'd be looking at them, innovative products that they're trying to sell you, and so on. It keeps them on their toes. Whereas once you're in-house, you relax. There's also a danger that you take over a supplier, maybe perfectly good, but another supplier out here has some sort of technical breakthrough, and suddenly is producing a much better component that you need, much more cheaply and much higher quality than your in-house person that you're kind of tied to there. So you lose the choice, really. By and large, the habit nowadays, or the style nowadays, is not to vertically integrate. It is to try to only do what you're really good at, only look after your core business, and to outsource everything else. Outsource the supply of components. Outsource maybe human resources. Outsource looking after the sales, so the receivables ledger to a factor. Outsource even internal audit to another firm. Outsource IT to a facilities manager. So you get rid of all of this stuff that you don't make profit out of, and you look after where you really generate profits, where your core competences really are. And this is the habit, rather than, it's better maybe outsourcing each time to the best of the best. Outsource to a really good supplier. That's the way to do business, rather than trying to do it yourself. Having said that, there may be occasions where some sort of backward or forward integration is worthwhile. If there was only this one supplier here, then of course you'd be worried about maybe somebody else taking him over, or them not making the product which you feel is essential. So really, to get assurance of supply, there may be a case for taking him over, but be quite wary about it. Now, once you have a group of companies in your kind of portfolio of companies, we have to know, in a way, how to manage them. And we look at a couple of methods of management here. First one you're probably familiar with, the BCG matrix, or the Boston Consulting Group matrix. It looks at either subsidiaries, divisions, or products here. And first of all, it's relative market share, which is your market share, over the largest. Your market share over the largest market share. And it looks at the growth rate of the industry. And let's start down here with this question mark or problem child. It's in an industry or a product which has got a high growth rate. And this means, if you think back to your product life cycle, which tends to go like that, we're down here. Early days of the product, growing steeply. This means that it's got a big future in front of it. So everyone's quite interested in being in a market or an industry that has a high growth rate. It's early days, it's got many years in front of it that you can still sell to. However, you only have a very small market share. So maybe you've got 2% of the market, and some of the big operators have got 40% of the market. The Boston Consulting Group people say you have got no long-term future there. These 40% people can just kind of click their fingers, a bit of extra marketing which they can easily afford, drop their prices a little bit of extra research and development which you can easily afford, and you, small operator with your kind of measly 2% share, will not be able to withstand that attack. So your question is, do I get out, or do I promote myself to a star position? Do I get higher market share? And that's going to be cash negative. Here you'd be saying, if you're going to be doing that, you are building the product or the division. It's cash negative because it's going to cost you to get more market share, more innovation, more marketing, drop your selling price in a way, buy market share in some way. The star product, we now have a high market share, and this is usually regarded as a zero kind of cash flow there. And this is characterized by hold. Now it's gone from negative to a zero cash flow because its volume's increased. You're selling more, it's not just as bad. But you're not making a lot of money out of it because you're now the top of the pile, if you like. You're maybe the person with the biggest market share. You want to keep that. It's you that other people are trying to steal market share from. So you're having to defend yourself, hold like a military position, hold on to your market share by still marketing extensively, promoting extensively, bringing new products on board and so on. At long last, all of these high market growths eventually going to come to a fairly static position here. And we go up here to the cash cow, which is going to be cash positive. It's cash positive because now, of course, we have been making this product for years. We have a big market share. We're very efficient, way down the learning curve, great economies of scale. But very importantly, competitors will see that the next stage of this product is probably decline. And why would a competitor make a big effort to attack your market share in a product that they perceive as the way out? So they kind of leave you to your own devices a little bit. You've got this old product kind of just ticking away there, almost off their radar. You do a little bit of advertising just to keep in front of the public, but it doesn't need a lot because the public know and love your product. It's maybe one they enjoyed during their childhood even. And this product can be very, very lucrative, and you'd be left alone, really. The cash cow doesn't become a dog. The dog here is, by the way, this will be called harvest. So a bit like a farmer, you've had the hard work earlier in the period, and towards the end of the year, you sit back and actually reap the benefits from this hard work. This here, the dog, you divest. It was a product which wasn't growing quickly, the market wasn't growing quickly, you didn't have much of it anyway, just get out of it. Just divest, close it down, sell it off to somebody else, but for goodness sake, just get rid of it. It's not going to do anything for you. Portfolio management works best if you have a number of different products on it, and what you really want to see is some cash cows generating money and some use for that money. You can use the positive cash flows to invest in these problem children. If all you had was problem children, it would be a funding problem. If all you had was cash cows, we're okay now, but in a few years' time, we're going to be losing revenue because the product is old. What we want, and it's what we kind of saw when we looked at the product life cycle, you really want a kind of succession of products coming through here. So here's your the kind of cash cow stage here. That's funding the early stages of growth of a new product and so on. You get this nice succession going through. The second portfolio management model which is around is one by Johnson, Scholes and Whittington, and they have these three ways. This is really dealing with your relationship, how you manage a subsidiary or a division. And the first one they call portfolio management. Now this is the way I would manage a portfolio of shares on the stock exchange. So let's say, now I'm a small investor, let's say I had some shares in let's say Marks and Spencer's, some shares in British Aerospace, some shares maybe in Lloyd's Bank, some shares, let's say, in an media company. Now, I'm a small shareholder. I have no mechanism, no way, and indeed no knowledge really, of interfering in the management of those companies. I can't go to Lloyd's Bank and tell them what to do, or to Marks and Spencer's and tell them what to do. It'd be ridiculous. So what I do is I say to myself, right, if the earnings per share go up, or the dividend goes up, or the share price goes up by a certain amount, I'll keep them. If they don't hit these financial criteria really to get over these hurdles, I'll sell them. So it's kind of management at a distance. I set criteria, go away, don't interfere, and they kind of sink or swim depending whether they meet those criteria or not. And this is then the attitude taken by these portfolio managers here. You have a head office owning, let's say, the subsidiaries. Obviously, they could interfere if they wanted to, but they don't. They simply say to each of the subsidiaries, here's your profit target, here's your market growth target, here's your return on capital employed target, or whatever they are. This is what it is. Now you go away and do that. And they do that from all the subsidiaries, but it's very hands-off. This is the ideal sort of management that you put in place if your group was very diversified, because of course the people at head office couldn't sensibly interfere or give direction to a vast variety of subsidiaries. They give them financial criteria. If they meet criteria, the division will stay in the group. If they don't, it's probably going to be sold on. Hands-off type at a distance management. Synergy managers are more different. It's different. What synergy managers do is, think of the name here, we're managing synergy. We're trying to reduce costs or to improve marketing by the two being together rather than being separate. There's a kind of logic, there's a real logical intent in forming the portfolio of subsidiaries or divisions here. So an example would be two divisions. One was in central heating, so installs, gas boilers, radiators, and so on. Another one which have taken over maybe is in double glazing. So replacing old windows, putting in double glazing, much better thermal qualities. Two separate businesses now in the one group. And you can see how you could use synergy in here. You could see how you could offer better deals to people. If you do central heating and you do double glazing, then we'll give you 15% off the cost. Or you know that 2 years ago somebody put in a new central heating system. You know they're interested in their heating bills and so on now. Maybe you write to the marketing offer, now put in the double glazing. There might even be methods of sharing some resources. So you just need one kind of type of van to go around. It doesn't matter whether it's carrying radiators or windows and so on. You might have some people who are kind of multi-skilled in putting in windows and putting in radiators and so on there. You will get real cost savings and real increase in marketing. You may have to knock their heads together. I mean, the divisional managers in a way kind of looking after their own little businesses, central heating and double glazing. It may be the job of head office to say, look, you two get together, come up with some offering that's going to improve the group sales to the public. Parental developers. Now this is as a problem with as a parent with a child, and the holding company here acts as a parent. The child is basically the little division. Now what happens with parents and children is there's knowledge transfer. The parent helps the child, to talk, obviously, helps the child to read, to write and so on, helps the child to learn the rules of games and so on. There's a transfer of from a highly skilled parent to the child who will learn, and it's exactly the same in parental developers in a group. Think that your division is a little biotech company. It's come from the biochemistry department of the university. They've discovered a compound which looks very, very promising as a drug to combat a serious disease. So they were good at the original research. What they won't be any good at is the clinical trials, which can go on for 5 to 10 years to make sure it works, to make sure it's safe, which are very expensive, very specialized to do. And they certainly won't be any good at international pharmaceutical marketing. So what you have is a parent, maybe like GlaxoSmithKline, a big international drug company, takes over that little biotech company. This is a kind of marriage made in heaven. Glaxo knows all about clinical trials and international marketing, and it, by taking over this biotech company, can provide those skills to the biotech company, and should really allow that discovery by that company really to rocket away in a way they could never have done if it had stayed separate. It can really add value, this parental development. Different methods of growth. How do we get either new divisions, new ventures, whatever you want to call them? How do we expand? First one we'll look at is takeover and merger. You buy something. Characteristics of this, of course, is very fast. This is a quick way of, say, getting into North America. Buy a chain of shops or something which is already operating there. It requires a lot of capital at the front. So you need to be able to either get cash or transfer shares. People normally want to be paid immediately. It could be more expensive, because you're not just buying the company, you're buying its goodwill. You're buying something which already has a reputation. It's nothing wrong with paying more money if you're buying goodwill. You just have to be careful that it doesn't get too expensive, that you put a reasonable value on the goodwill. And what about risk? Now, risk is interesting. If you buy a company which is already working well, and you buy the whole team, you keep the whole team, like buying into this North American company, as long as you don't do anything to mess it up. If it's working well now, it should continue to work well. It's a fairly low risk way into a company. You're not having to learn the ropes, if you like, in North America, or how to make new products or anything of that sort. However, the risk can also be higher because, of course, the seller of anything always knows more than the buyer. It's like buying a second-hand car. The seller of the second-hand car knows its problems more than the buyer does, until the buyer gets into it and drives around, having bought it, drives around for a while, and then you find that some awful problem with the suspension. So there can be more risk with it as well. There is also disruption. Employees tend to find takeovers and mergers very unsettling. Because they kind of expect that after a takeover and merger, there's going to be some sort of redundancies, there's going to be some sort of combination of IT departments or accounting departments. They'll be looking to save costs, squeeze a synergy out of it, and so on. And if you're not careful, many of your best employees will leave. They leave because they fear maybe they're going to be sacked. They leave maybe because they don't like the new boss or don't like the new culture in the organization and so on. And they leave and they join competitors and they take knowledge with them and so on. It can be very expensive, actually. And the period of disruption normally lasts for about a year until everything kind of settles down and people feel safe and comfortable again. Organic growth is almost the reverse of all of these. It can be done slowly. You can fund it out of retained profits, or if you want a bit faster, do a rights issue. You are just buying, of course, the non-current assets. You're not buying any goodwill. Risk is the other way. Of course, you might be starting up a business about which you know little. You'd be starting afresh in France, say, setting up your own shops and distribution system. You're in a different area of business. There's a risk that you don't make it work. And it is certainly not disruptive. People like expansion. They see They're opening branches, you're opening in other countries. You say, well, maybe in a year they open somewhere else, maybe I could be the manager of that place and so on. Whereas with takeovers and mergers, they tend to feel that promotional routes are being closed off. Joint ventures. Joint ventures is where you have two companies, let's say A and B, and they form the joint venture company. They will put capital into it. They may transfer staff to it. They will put know-how, knowledge into it. They may even transfer non-current assets to it. Best recent example is Airbus. Airbus started off as 4 European aeronautical companies getting together to form a company to rival Boeing, to develop new civil jet planes. What they do is they spread the risk, because it'd be very risky one of those companies taking on Boeing on itself. They spread the finance, because it could be, maybe no one company could afford to set up and develop a whole new fleet of airliners. They bring together expertise from different areas, and maybe no one company had the expertise, and now they can share it. So for large projects, it's very, very popular. You share the risk, you share the finance, and you share the expertise. You need to be careful at the start to know how it's going to end. Joint ventures are usually only formed for a temporary period, a very specific venture, and you need to know how you're going to get your money out, how you're going to get your profits. You need to know what happens if one of these joint ventures wants out early because of some other difficulties and so on. So you need a really good, it's almost like a prenuptial agreement in marriage. How's this going to end? And if it's not all kind of laid down very precisely, then it can be very messy kind of getting out of the joint venture. Licensing is where you allow your brand, your trade name, or your methods to be used by others, and what you get in exchange is a royalty. It's a fantastically quick and low-risk way of expanding abroad. So instead of setting up your own factory and distribution system, let's say in Germany, you find a German manufacturer and a German chain of shops who will deal with your product. You let them deal with it. They make it according to your kind of specifications and so on, and you take a royalty. If it doesn't work, you're not going to lose a lot. You don't have to invest a lot up front. You have to make sure, of course, they don't harm your brand by making the product badly or providing a poor service, but that is subject really to contract. Franchising is a bit like licensing, a bit like licensing on steroids, really. But the franchisor tends to be much more hands-on, maybe, than licensing. So let's say I wanted to start up a hamburger business. If I were to kind of put my own name above the shop, the chances are it's not going to work very well because I've got no market presence. But if I went to, let's say, to McDonald's and said, oh, look, I want to be a franchisee of yours, then it's taking a lot of risk out of it. I am buying into a successful product. McDonald's will give me advice and guidance and so on, which is going to really minimize the chance of failure. So what I would normally do, I'm not saying this is exactly McDonald's, but this is typical of many franchise arrangements. First of all, you buy in. And in exchange for that, let's say McDonald's here, they will supply some know-how. They will supply advice. Well, that is know-how, really, but anyway. They will supply marketing. They will give their brand name, of course, to it, which means it's almost certainly going to be successful. They will let me benefit from any research and development they do in providing new products and so on. And they'll also supply me with the raw materials and also rules. So with their advice, with their know-how, with their marketing expertise and their brand name and so on, my little franchise is almost certainly going to work, much less risk. Note, however, that we paid money there and we're paying money here. McDonald's will typically insist that I buy raw materials from them or from a nominated supplier, and I will have to pay the price. I will not be able to go around and find a cheaper supplier. So McDonald's is in a way potentially getting a second slice of profits there. They'll allow me to make a profit, but it may not be, a fantastic profit. And rules. This is where many of the franchise arrangements fall to bits. Franchise companies want all of their outlets in a way to behave in the same way, to present the same products in the same way at the same time, at the same price. I will not have freedom to drop the price, say, of a product. I will not have the freedom to choose my own opening hours and so on. And even though I went into the franchise with the hope I was going to be running my own little business, I'm actually not. And this is where many of the fallouts occur, that the person running the franchise doesn't like this very hands-on approach. And then sometimes, and again, I'm not saying this is only McDonald's, there may be a royalty. Royalty based on profits or based on turnover. So the franchise company's got three potential ways of making money: the buy-in, the supply of the raw materials, and the royalty at the end of that. It keeps the head office at the franchise company very, very lean. It devolves a lot of the management to the person who's running each of the franchises and so on there. They get a little input of capital every time somebody signs up. It's been a fantastically successful way of expanding, particularly in the retail sector. Strategic alliances are agreements between companies basically to cooperate. And sometimes these companies would, on the face of it, look as though they would be competitors. So there is a strategic alliance between British Airways and American Airlines. They're part of the One World Airline Alliance. And even though they both compete on, say, the North American route, they find it useful to cooperate. Because now if I go to a BA site and say I want to fly from London to New York, there are probably, 20 flights offered in a day. They're all said to be BA, they all got the BA kind of flight numbers, but actually about half of them is going to be American Airlines. When they go along to get on the plane, I'd say it's an American airline plane. So what it allows BA, and of course American Airlines, to do is to apparently double the offer they're making to members of the public, which was offering them much more kind of choice. And then if BA, let's say, I think it's also in with Qantas. So here we have a much longer route through the Far East, Middle East, Far East, and down to Australia and so on there. Again, it gives people who want to travel to Australia, they could start off on a BA flight, they could change to Singapore to a Qantas flight. It's all kind of seamless. And they're saying by this cooperation we are getting great marketing advantages given to our customers. We seem to be a much bigger, stronger player. And even though we do appear to be competitors, sometimes competition is going to be worthwhile.